And welcome back to Shovicks Sports Sh-t. I'm Cory,
And I am Austin.
and we got video. We finally got video. We've been talking about it for a couple weeks, and now it's finally here. We're excited about it. Before we get into our sports hits, we finally got to 100 followers on Instagram. That's huge. We have new listeners from Massachusetts, and then we had a new listener from Romania, which is awesome as well. So shout out to you guys, new listeners. It's slowly expanding, and we had another one from England. So that's always fun and exciting when we get, especially now that we start getting it over on the other side of the world. So again, thank you guys. That's almost 60 new followers in the last week. Now, if we can just translate that into listeners, that would be awesome. So we, again, appreciate all of you guys, and thank you for your support. What's your thoughts on some Romania getting on the viewership?
I think that's awesome. I think we're in a day and age where something like this can truly be global. It doesn't, anywhere anyone wants to listen or follow or even hop on an episode or something. I mean, we're open to it, but I'm excited to grow the worldwide following. I think their viewpoints and opinions on things will differ from ours. So the fact that it's kind of starting to get some traction all over is huge. And it can only be good things for us and the listeners to just get additional points of views and opinions and things like that. I think it's awesome.
I'm hoping with video that also helps. Now we'll start getting stuff onto YouTube. I know a lot of the guys that I've talked to that do this say that their stuff didn't really take off until they started getting stuff onto YouTube. That kind of gets your following going. We're not expecting tens of thousands of people, but just a little bit of growth. And if we could get to tens of thousands of people, awesome. That's still not enough people to make us retire from our jobs. But again, this is just a passion. We know nothing, and no inside knowledge, nothing. We just kind of, we just want to do this as a passion. So, without any further ado, Shovicks Sports hits tonight. Number 3, because it's not as important, it's just kind of funny that Denver put out their depth chart yesterday. Had all the rookies listed at the bottom of each position. So Bo Nix was number 3 at the quarterback spot. Jared Stidham 1, Zach Wilson 2, and then like all the things that you would think, overreaction is what I'm going to call it, because that's exactly what it is. Coaches don't care about the depth charts right now. It's just basically them putting stuff out. So I thought it was kind of funny that everyone's like, oh, is Bo Nix not the guy after all? When in reality, if you read and you listen to anything that people are saying, it's quite opposite, that Bo's actually doing really well in practice. What you would expect from a rookie. A few mistakes here and there. You're a rookie quarterback coming into the NFL. You're going to have your ups and downs, but to react the way that I've been reading some reactions and them freaking out, like, why did they trade? Or it's a good thing they didn't trade up to get him, but now it's like, was he really worth the first round pick?
Yeah, I mean, that's just media doing what the media does. It's exciting time for football because football's here, but at the same time, it's still kind of quiet. No big major news stories, so you kind of have to look for it where you can. You were spot on. Depth charts don't truly matter that much. Coaches don't really care about it, specifically Sean Payton. He lives in his own world, and nobody else really matters.
Especially Sean Payton. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's a rookie. It's not even week 1 of preseason. You're not just going to come out and hand him the job, even on paper. You still have to quote unquote earn it. You are still a rookie. You haven't done a damn thing. Like, it is an overreaction. That's what the media has to do. They have to find something where there isn't anything, because it is kind of the quiet time. I would be shocked if Bo Nix is third string quarterback when the season starts. So it's not to say that a veteran won't start week 1. That's always a possibility. I don't think it is here, but I feel confident saying that he's not going to be third string when the games start to count.
And we'll do more of a deep dive in a couple of weeks when we start looking at, training camp review between the Chiefs and the Broncos. We won't do a full roster breakdown, but we'll kind of give an idea of, some of the stuff that we're, reading up on and seeing. I agree. Overreaction, and I'm on the bandwagon of, I think everything's kind of going how Sean wants it to go right now, and he'll be I still think he'll be week 1 starter. But it wouldn't surprise me if maybe Jarrett Stidham gets the nod just to, let Bo kind of get the feel for the game and see what real NFL football looks like. So let's move on to number 2. Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins agreed to a restructured contract worth $90 million, and that's over the next 3 seasons. That includes $65 million guaranteed. That's on the heels of Tua getting paid. Do you think that's about the right amount? Or are you kind of surprised that he took that?
I think it seems right up the alley of what he deserves, just given where the market's at. I think it's good for the Dolphins as well. It might be a little high annually, but it's not a 4, 5, 6 year commitment to a guy who's starting to get up there. So I think Tyreek gets the money he wants, and Dolphins don't have to commit a lot of years to it. We're getting to that point, but we've known from day one that Tyreek's entered the league and became kind of a superstar that he wasn't willing to not get his paper. So if he agreed to it, then I think it's absolutely what he thinks he deserves, which is really all that matters.
If he was ever going to reset the market, he's past that. I know he did want a little restructure with a little bit more guarantees. So, he got that part. So I think it's a win-win for both. He's past that stage of, resetting everything. Now it's time for those young guys to, do that. Jamar Chase, some of those guys that are coming up, it's their turn to maybe catch Justin Jefferson and whatnot for that. So number 1 wouldn't be number 1 without some Chiefs news and Harrison Butker. No, not what you think. He resets the kicker market. Yeah, 4 years, 26.5. That puts him at an annual of $6.4 million, just above Justin Tucker. And we've talked more about kickers than what I thought we would, especially when we were doing our playoff review. If there's 2 kickers that you would want to pay, it's Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I didn't think we'd talk any kickers. No disrespect to the kicking game and special teams, but not usually a hot topic. But Harrison Butker's kind of proven this offseason that kickers and their opinions and their paydays do matter. So good for him. No, I think what you want of him off the field, whether you agree with his opinions or not, he's allowed to have them. One thing you can't argue with is his kicking ability on a football field. And that's what he's getting paid for. He deserves to be the highest paid or second highest paid kicker. I'm not saying I would or wouldn't commit to a kicker like that, but when you're playing a lot of meaningful football, a field goal kicker matters a lot. So I don't hate it. I wouldn't say I love it. I'm not mad that he's locked up for us, but it kind of is what it is. I definitely don't have a whole lot of thought on kickers and their contracts, but I agree. I think him and Tucker are easily the 2 best, so they're being paid like it.
Well, let's think of where he came from, too. You guys got him off the Panthers practice squad. The Panthers are probably sitting back like, what the fuck?
He's probably like, thank the good Lord. Like, I have more Super Bowl wins than the Panthers have wins in the last 5 years, so thank goodness. But no, it's crazy because I can't remember who our kicker was. Gets hurt, and we're like, we have to go get a kicker, and we just snatch him from a practice squad, and a few Super Bowls later, and a massive payday, and I still don't think I'm ready to say he's better than Tucker. We know how my feelings are with Justin Tucker. I'm a little schoolgirl, and I think I've drafted him as high as like the 7th round in a fantasy draft before. My little schoolgirl crush on him, not afraid to admit it. I probably still won the league that year, so it's whatever. But no, I like Butker. I'm not going to comment on his opinions off the field. On the field, I'm glad he's a Chief. So,
yeah, again, that's just another one that the Chiefs get lucky to have and find. It's one of those diamonds that you take a chance on and turns out in your favor. So that's going to wrap it for the Shovicks Sports Hits.
Snead would have taken this contract though. Like we could have kept Snead and given him this contract.
Snead's not hitting 60-yard bombs when needed. So, but yeah, I mean, I would probably rather,
Snead's not taking $6 million a year.
No, God, no. So let's kind of dive into what we're talking about tonight. That's our NFL Preseason Awards. It's exciting, one, because that means football is almost here. Preseason's getting going here this weekend. It's really going to ramp up. Chiefs play Saturday, Broncos play Sunday. Now the next 3 weeks, you got to hope for fantasy purposes that, those top guys stay healthy. We just talked not too long ago about we absolutely love this time of year, but we actually also hate this time of year just because you start kind of getting an idea of who you want to look at in the draft. And then, we've pushed our draft back for this purpose, for this exact reason. So with that, we'll start with MVP. And why don't you go ahead and tell us who you selected as your MVP?
I'm just going to be a little bit of a homer, I guess, on this pick. But I'm going Patrick Mahomes. Sorry, Mahomes' mom. I know you don't like people calling him Patty. I don't know. I have a gut feeling. I know they won the Super Bowl last year, but how the regular season went, I don't think any of them were okay with it. You pair that with, I think they're all truly hungry for a three-peat. I go back and forth on them kind of coasting through the regular season to make sure they're ready for the postseason. I think I'm going more on the bandwagon. I think they're going to be locked in from week one through the Super Bowl. They're going to leave no doubt. They're not going to chance kind of a downfall down the stretch like they did last year. They got him a few more weapons. With or without Rashee Rice, I think the weapons are good, are better around him. I still think the defense, there's always natural regression when you have a year like you did last year. So I think a little natural regression from the defense. So you're going to need a little bit more from the offense. I think he's going to outdo his 50 touchdown season. And obviously, if you do that, you're going to win MVP. So that's my mindset on that.
Yeah, and it's scary to think that they can be better than what they were, even though they won a Super Bowl. But like you said, the regular season was kind of suspect. I know at one point Denver actually got within, 1 game, 2 games during their little 5-game win streak that the Chiefs kind of slid. Obviously, in the end, it didn't matter. But I agree. The weapons, they got better with Hollywood and Xavier Worthy. You're always going to have 87. And Pacheco, obviously, is in your backfield with Mahomes. And, yeah, homer pick, cool, but at the same time, it is actually realistic. So there's no...
I think one thing not to forget to mention, and I'm going to mention it every chance that I can, let's not forget the Raiders fucking up. First with having the blueprint, and then kind of mocking Mahomes with a little doll or whatever. That's at least 2 games right there that Mahomes...
But when you have the blueprint, you can fuck around with a doll like that.
Yeah, when you have the blueprint, that's right. No, so that's at least 2 games that are going to help. That it's going to help Mahomes' MVP case. I'm all for good trash talk and stuff, but
do something first.
Well, yeah, and it has to be between teams like Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens. From the Bengals, it's annoying, but they deserve it. They've been to the one Super Bowl recently. The Chiefs haven't. They've beaten the Chiefs a couple times. The Ravens are always there and competitive. Ravens don't really talk any shit. It was mostly Bengals, but it's you can beat us in the regular season all you want. I know we're the Raiders Super Bowl. Heck, even the Bills beat us in the regular season, and then we see how the postseasons go. So, good for them beating us last year. Kind of a fluke game. Your quarterback doesn't complete a pass in the second half, and you win. It's just a fluke. But kind of remember who you are. And that's 2 games this year that Patrick is going to remind you of who you are.
Yeah, I don't envy Raider fans because they get their hopes up, right? So like, well, Christmas we beat the Chiefs. Cool, but where were you the rest of the season? Like, you have a damn good player in Max Crosby, but your 2 quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, is that really going to scare the Chiefs that much? Like, I love Gardner Minshew. Don't get me wrong. Come on now. So sticking with the Bengals, I picked Joe Burrow as my MVP. MVP can be kind of I don't know. It's probably more than likely going to be a quarterback. I mean, Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill proved that last year. My God, either one of those guys could have easily won it over Lamar. But I picked Joe Burrow. I think this is the time. He's feeling good, healthy. He's got the not so Slim Shady haircut going on. I think outside of the slow starts that Cincinnati usually has to start the season, I think that's the only question mark. But I do, when that offense is healthy, Joe Burrow is pretty good. Let's be honest. And I think if anyone could take the Chiefs down, it is Joe Burrow. But I'm not going to go that far quite yet. And I know how you feel about Joe Burrow and the Bengals and Jamar Chase refusing to say Patrick Mahomes' name, which is weird to me. But yeah, again, Joe Burrow is my pick for the MVP. But again, man, you could go so many different ways with MVP.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, I like Joe Burrow. I don't want to say he loses any respect, but like, you're not getting an MVP vote when you show up to training camp and you look like the 21 or 22 Jump Street Jonah Hill. Can't do it. I don't get it. Compare that with you still have Orlando Brown blocking for you. That's kind of 2 things working against you. But you're not wrong. He is really good. They got a little more youth in the backfield. I think that'll help them out. I think nothing against Joe Mixon, but he doesn't take extra yards or anything. He kind of gets what's just opened up for him. I think Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Is it Chase Brown?
It is Chase Brown.
I think those 2 are going to help a little bit more in the run game. I know it's weird to hear, oh, they're going to do better in the run game. How's that help Joe Burrow? Football, run game, even any kind of a run game helps quarterback. Opens things up for those weapons they have. So, I mean, it's there for Joe Burrow. I think he's one of the handful of quarterbacks that's always going to be kind of a favorite to win MVP for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, Patty, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Josh, maybe Herbert, TBD on how that goes. But there's that group of quarterbacks that's always going to be not a wrong answer for an MVP favorite. So, I as much as I dislike the Bengals, it's not I agree. He has a really good chance of winning it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking outside the box. I mean, it could have easily been Lamar again or Patrick. And I even thought about putting Aaron Rodgers up there just because, but Jets, and who knows how that shit show's going to go. So moving on to AFC Rookie of the Year, I'll go. Not a shock here. Speaking of Homer. Yeah, speaking of Homer, go Knicks. If everything's true about what I'm hearing, he and Sean Payton, he's starting to pick things up really well. I know it's training camp. I know overreactions happen. But I like the experience he's coming in with. I mean, yes, he started 60 games in college. That's a ton. That's more than your average quarterback that comes in as a rookie, right? I mean, you can look at it 1-2 ways. Why did he have to start 60 games? Why didn't he come out sooner? I mean, cool, but at the same time, football IQ is everything. I think he has it. I think Sean may have found his guy who can throw in between the numbers. What Sean loved doing in New Orleans, running the football and throwing in between the numbers. And that's just what Bo can do. And not to take a shot at Russell Wilson, Russ just didn't throw inside the numbers very well. There was too many times where he missed those guys where I think Bo's going to be able to pick that up. And I'm looking at maybe, I'm not going to put him at CJ Stroud, what CJ Stroud did last year, but, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that he can come close. We'll just put it at that, close. And we'll get into that in a couple weeks when we do our training camp review. I'm not as down on the Broncos roster as some people are, but I'm also, it's not perfect. But I'm going with Bo Nix. And you You selected a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, just to piggyback off Bo Nix, I'm a Chiefs fan, but I also do a really good, when I have to, unbiased opinion. I think the issues with Denver's roster is more defensively. I think offensively, they actually have a pretty good roster. And Bo Nix's strengths are exactly what Sean Payton and Drew Brees did in New Orleans. Short passes, quick passes, between the numbers. Been reading a lot of knocks on Bo Nix about his completion percentage was high because he would throw it a yard and his receivers would do the rest. Well, A, you can do that in the NFL. B, it's absolutely not true. People like to just hate, but he has a good supporting cast from coaching staff to receivers. I don't know about the depth, but offensive line starters look average to above average across the board, which is always nice. So even as a Chiefs fan, I don't hate the Bo Nix pick. Usually most awards, especially offensive-wise, are going to go to a quarterback. I don't think he wouldn't be one of my top 2 or 3, but I don't think a quarterback in Sean Payton's system with the weapons he has is necessarily a bad answer. But to go with who I did Brian Thomas Jr., receiver, Jags. Sometimes a rookie, fantasy-wise, I try to avoid rookie anything. But they have a lot of production to fill with Ridley gone. Trevor Lawrence is now paid. I'm not going to sit here and say Brian Thomas Jr. is going to put up like Tyreek Hill numbers, but I think he can easily have the kind of season that Calvin Ridley had, if not a little better. That's 80 plus catches, 1,200 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Because the Jags have a good running game, but they still rely on Trevor Lawrence's arm. So
that's what I was going to say. They're going to throw the ball.
Yep, and I mean Trevor Lawrence. They're going to throw. Production has to be filled. From a talent perspective, he's elite. I kind of just like his situation. It'd be one of those if he was on a different team, I'd probably go elsewhere. But I kind of like where he fell, his talent with the quarterback and the coaching staff. It's not necessarily him going to have to learn an entire route tree. Dougie P's pretty good at scheming people the ball. So I like his situation, honestly.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's not that the Jags are going to take a step backwards, but there could be games where they're down. And this is a guy that could get some trash time. So if you're thinking about fantasy purposes, we've all valued trash time. Hell, some of us have won a lot of games based on trash time. A lot of us have also lost based on our opponent getting a shit ton of trash time. So, it could be one of those situations. I don't think the Jags are going to be all as bad as, some are thinking. I still like their weapons, and I still think there's enough volume to go around that makes him, a pretty good candidate. So let's go to NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. I went Jaden Daniels. He's going to be a day one starter. Dan Campbell's raving about him. Absolutely love Cliff Kingsbury as the OC there with him. I think he's, Cliff did pretty good with Kyler. And Cliff's offense is all about the quick hitters, getting the ball out. I like the Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson. The running game's going to be there, I think. So good check down screens, especially to Eckler. Eckler can feast off those. You still got McLaurin. So again, I know a lot of people are going to sit here and say Caleb Williams, cool, but at the end of the day, you got to think about situations. I think Washington and Chicago, somewhat similar, roster-wise. I would still, I think Caleb Williams has a lot of growing to do, and I still don't like the staff around him. Not to say that they won't figure it out. Not to say that he won't be the Rookie of the Year. This is just what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the scariest part is the strength Jaden Daniels already had coming out of college was he throws an incredible deep ball. So pairing that with Terry McLaurin.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so I like that pick a lot. I would try to avoid quarterbacks for every award since they always are the ones who end up with it, which means he probably will. But I agree. I like his situation. Dan Quinn's a hell of a coach. He's a player's coach. I know he's more defensive, but even in Atlanta, all the players would rave and just run through a wall for the dude. And then you pair that with an offensive mind like Cliff Kingsbury, where he's not running the team, where he just has to run an offense. I do think he's an elite offensive coordinator. I hope he realizes that and just stays an offensive coordinator his whole life. But they do have talent. Maybe a little suspect offensive line. Their quarterbacks were some of the most sacked quarterbacks last year. So, if they can keep him upright, I know I didn't pick him, but if he stays healthy and stays upright, I think he walks away with the NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. For what you said, I know Caleb Williams has probably more talent around him, but I'm with you. I don't like the staff in Chicago. The weapons of DJ Moore, Adunzi, and Keenan Allen with Cole Kmet and whatnot, like it's loaded. But I think it's the same thing with when Justin Fields was there. Like they did him no favors. It's hard to believe that they're going to learn how to do that now. Not to say Caleb Williams will fail, because I think he has enough talent to try to right the ship, but not enough to really win any kind of postseason awards. With that said, my NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year, like I said, I don't go quarterbacks. I went Marvin Harrison Jr. I do think he can challenge with a healthy Kyler Murray all year. I think Harrison Jr. can challenge the top 4 or 5 receivers from a statistical standpoint. The dude he's a freak athlete, freak build. I've seen some knocks on his work ethic and kind of his attitude. If they can get that in check and actually get him to show up and ball out all the time, and Kyler Murray stays healthy, you might be looking at just like Offensive Player of the Year and Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, the stars have to align for that, but even if they don't align, I think he does enough to win NFC Rookie of the Year. Kyler Murray's kind of the last year and a half turned into kind of the quarterback leader, vocal guy that Cliff was always trying to get him to.
And he's buying into the new coaching staff, essentially.
Yeah, and that's huge. So to get him an alpha receiver like Marvin Harrison, not to say that I'm going to be super excited to watch Cardinals games, but I do think it could be exciting. Like they have talent there. They're in a kind of a tough division, so that always kind of hurts them a little bit. But man, they have talent, and I'm kind of excited to see it. I think Marvin Harrison gets the Offensive Rookie of the Year because of it.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals, they could be a sleeper team. If everything goes well and they stay healthy. Jonathan Gannon was kind of a sneaky hire. I didn't agree with it at first, but then just to watch the games, even if they started down big, they made it competitive. Those guys played hard. They beat the Cowboys. So, yeah. So moving on to AFC Defensive Player of the Year. We kind of both went with, not shockers, essentially. I went with Myles Garrett. Dude's still a freak athlete. Dude still, plays at a high level. The Browns have a good chance of being a really good team this year as well, if everything aligns. But yeah, give me Myles Garrett all day, every day. I love his ability. And, do I think he's going to, win MVP? No, but obviously defense players don't. But really like the prospects of it. And I know it's not really going out on a limb and making a bold statement, but give me Myles Garrett.
Yeah, no, I love Myles Garrett. There's not anything defensively he can't do. I had him on my defensive player fantasy league last year. And it's incredible the amount of things that he would do. They don't just use him as a pure pass rusher. they put him out there to block extra points and field goals and punts, and he does it. You pair that with the fact that he's always had some sort of injury that he's just played through.
Yep.
Well, hold on. Hasn't just played through, he's dominated through.
Yeah.
I probably would go with Myles Garrett. I just didn't want to have the same answers as him because, I mean, that's stupid. Why are we doing that? I don't think there's a better defensive player in all of football than Myles Garrett. Steelers fans would probably be like, yeah, TJ Watt, yeah. Like, cool, I'm not saying TJ Watt sucks, but, like, I'm still giving Myles Garrett. With that being said, just to make Steelers fans a little more happy again, I did pick TJ Watt. Again, he doesn't suck. He is really damn good at football. He is a sack artist. He's pretty good against the run. Are you upset if you have either one of them? Let's be honest. So,
oh, God. Give me either one of them.
Yeah, so if it's up to you or me, it looks like the Defensive Player of the Year is going to come from the North. Both really good players. I think it's kind of funny that we picked both players from the North and the AFC. But when we transition to the NFC, we actually picked from the same team.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see where football's loaded in a couple divisions, a couple teams. But TJ Watt's really good. He also battles injuries. Some of them he hasn't been able to play through, but he always comes back way sooner than expected. Those dudes, both of them just football players. Both dudes you want on your team, both dudes you want to line up beside. Both will absolutely, barring injuries, will be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. Guaranteed. Write it in. If they play all or most games, both of those names are going to be in the running.
If TJ Watt doesn't end up winning it, Steeler fans will probably say, or rebel. Especially if Myles Garrett wins it, then they're going to literally compare everything they can to try to justify it. And sometimes they do have a point. TJ Watt does. It seems like he doesn't get the love always. I'm not quite sure why. Because he always puts up good numbers. I think another thing that we're saying is the AFC North has a chance to be probably the best division in football. Again, if everyone can stay healthy, Steelers defense is always going to be the Steelers defense. It doesn't matter how good the Ravens offense is clicking. It still ends up being like a 13-10 game just because the Steelers defense is just that good. Really the only thing holding the Steelers back is their offense. And that's not an exaggeration. You average almost barely above 10 points a game last year and you still make the playoffs. So again, that's not a knock. It's just, TJ I don't know what the knock is on TJ and why he doesn't get more love. But so going to the NFC Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to say who I picked and then you're probably listening and you're probably like, oh, I know who he's going to pick. So I'm going Fred Warner. I still think he is the best linebacker in football. I don't know what else really much to say. That's your quarterback, your defense. He does benefit from having the defensive line. There was that stretch where they were always taking, defensive linemen top 3. So, their defensive line was always stacked. They've gotten rid of some of those guys just because they couldn't pay all of them, and they just replace them with another good one. So, I went Fred Warner, and I know you love middle linebackers too. So, what's your thoughts on Fred?
I love Fred. You're right. I love middle linebackers. And he's the best one in the game. Sure tackler, smart as hell, athletic, very underrated in pass coverage. I know when I first started liking football way back in the day, and your one job as kind of the off-ball inside linebacker was to just be downhill and blow people up in the run game. Your pass coverage was not necessarily important, but it's kind of flipped to where you have to be outstanding in pass coverage, or at least hold your own. And he does. He's kind of, I want to put him more of like a hybrid linebacker, because I think he would classify more as like a run support downhill safety. That's
Right.
Just how I think he is.
Absolutely.
And how good he is at stopping the run. But that's also how good he is at stopping the pass and playing pass coverage. So he would be my pick. maybe not Defensive Player of the Year, because that a lot of times you have to have stack up stats. And I don't know if I'd say he's the best defensive player in the league, but I would say he's the most important. Not just because he is the quarterback of the defense, but I think that's one person that defense would actually suffer without. They could lose some of these other ones and probably still be okay. If they lost Fred, I don't know. And I'm sure he's missed games, and I'm sure it wasn't pretty, but I don't want to just guess. But probably the most important defensive player in the league is Fred Warner. So I don't know how his stats usually look. Has to look good enough because I'm pretty sure he's always an All-Pro. But yeah, I love Fred. I think that's a great pick. I hope he does win it because now it's usually whoever ends up with the most sacks, which is why I picked Nick Bosa. I don't really know. I feel like all the good edge rushers outside of Micah Parsons are in the AFC. You know, like the two we mentioned, and then like Max Crosby and Danielle Hunter.
Aaron Donald retired, so it's like usually it's Aaron Donald. So now you don't get to pick him. So it's like, who's up next?
Exactly, and then like even Danielle Hunter hopped over to the AFC, and it's part of me wanted to go Aiden Hutchinson. I'm still not sold on that whole defense as a unit. I think that's where some of these other pass rushers can thrive. Max Crosby's kind of different because, honestly, I have no idea. I mean, he just plays every snap at 100%, and nobody else can. So he's a different breed, but most of the time you have to either have at least a good D-line play beside you or like a good unit. Not quite there on Aiden Hutchinson. So that's really how I ended up on Nick Bosa. I think he's going to have the biggest sack total, probably on the best defense in the NFC. Again, if you watch football, Nick Bosa is not really too much of a stretch for Defensive Player of the Year. So,
well, compared to his brother,
yeah, does his brother even play anymore? Anyway, yeah, we have feelings about that, but yeah, all four. I can't even. I sitting here thinking I can't even think of another NFC player outside of Nick Bosa where I'd might give him a run for the money. So, and there's obviously going to be people who do either a surprise person or kind of a forgotten person, but it could be our boy Dorrance. Why can't he have like a 20 sack season with Dan?
Right.
Who knows? We kind of went with favorites. I know, but there's always going to be a surprise person, and truthfully, I just hope it's I guess I could have put that as my guess, surprise person, because there's going to be one.
So let's go to AFC Offensive Player of the Year, and I'm going to let you kind of give yours first because we did our fantasy running back top 10 a couple weeks ago, and you had this guy on there and pretty high. I keep seeing a bunch of people who aren't as sold on this one as you are, so I'll let you kind of do the honors of your AFC Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I picked Derrick Henry. I'm going to go to the point where I would have put him for MVP if the MVP didn't have to be a quarterback. I don't know why people are so bullish on Derrick Henry. He didn't move teams because he's lost a step or because he's starting to rack up injuries. I don't understand. He's still Derrick Henry, and I'm still going to act like he's Derrick Henry until he gives me a reason not to. So when you think of him still being Derrick Henry, he's going to be in a way better offense than he's ever been in. Plain ever. This offense is going to be better than any Ryan Tannehill-led offense or Marcus Mariota offense that Derrick Henry has ever played for, or Will Levis, or Malik Willis, or whoever else they put out there.
Yeah, he's going to a team who runs the football. They know how to run the football. That's all they've done is run the football with Gus Edwards, with Justice Hill, J.K. Dobbins. It's not a knock on those guys, right? Those are still pretty good running backs. But none of those guys are Derrick Henry.
No,
right?
and Derrick Henry's going to take some goal line carries off of Lamar because you're going to want a little less wear and tear off of Lamar. If you watch the Titans game, they didn't scheme in the run game. They put 7 dudes on the offensive line, handed them the ball, and said, figure this out for us, please. The Ravens actually have a run scheme. They pull people. They open up lanes. They scheme people. you're also going to have to worry about Lamar keeping the ball on occasion. I don't
Exactly.
understand why people are so bullish on Derrick Henry. Until the moment Derrick Henry gives me a reason to think he's not Derrick Henry anymore, I think he's going to be the most dangerous person in football this season. And I'm not even from a fantasy perspective. As a Chiefs fan, it scares the shit out of me. Because if they had Derrick Henry in the playoff game last year, they would have ran the ball more than 6 times. Derrick Henry would have had 6 carries on the first drive.
Yeah. Well, and I think that helps. I think that helps Lamar's MVP case too, because now the pressure's going to go off him, and you're going to put more pressure on defenses. Like, cool, we can stack the box, but there's nothing saying that Lamar's not going to pull that ball from Derrick Henry and take it 80 yards, right? And at a time where you're like, well, we better guard Lamar, then he's going to give it to Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry, we see what Derrick Henry does. He can still bust off a 90-yard run, 95-yard touchdown run. That's just how it is. So, yeah, I love that. I love your pick.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, people might be he's not going to have 35 carries in a game anymore, but he doesn't need that many carries to have even more production in this offense. What he used to do with 30-plus carries, I think he can do with 15 to 20 carries now, just given the team and the scheme. And I get it. His workload's going to be a little bit less, so you kind of think production's going to be less. That's not necessarily the case. When you go from a team, if you watch Titan games, they handed him the ball, straight up blocked, and just said, please figure this out for us. And like teams knew that, so they would just put 11 dudes in the box and said, there's nothing for you to do. But the time there was
and he'd still do it.
Derrick Henry, take it 80 yards in a flash.
Yeah. Just always
he hasn't lost anything. And honest to God, I'm more worried about the Ravens now than I've ever been. Because now it's not just, it's Lamar. They'll Lamar their way out of the game against us. A healthy Derrick Henry changes the dynamic of everything. And I'm shocked as hell that Derrick Henry people are bullish on him. I don't know.
But it could be, well, the Titans didn't bring him back because maybe the Titans know something. No, I just think the Titans just couldn't pay him. New staff, young quarterback still blows my mind. You'd want to help a young quarterback, but that's neither here nor there. I went Tyreek Hill. I know it's not going too far out on a limb again, but as long as he's in that Mike MacDonald offense, and as long as he's still running like he does, he's always going to have that threat. He probably could have had Calvin Johnson's record last year if he doesn't get hurt for a few games. I don't know if he gets to that. But again, he could. That offense isn't going to change too much. I mean, they still scheme everything really well. It's got to, be in the first part of the season because, like we discussed earlier, before we came on here, the first part of the season, the Dolphins look really well. But as the seasons change and it gets colder and they have to travel to New England, travel to Buffalo, cold weather cities, that's kind of when we saw them slip up a little bit. Could this be the year where maybe they figure it out? I don't know, but I do know that Tyreek Hill is still top 2 receiver. And as long as he's still playing and at a high level, I'm going to pick him as my offensive player of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. The only defense for speed is honestly cold weather. You tighten up a little bit more. That team alone is a witness of it. It's a little colder. I'm not saying they get slower because even them at their slowest is way faster than me, but I'm not a Chiefs fan who has any ill will towards Tyreek Hill. I think he's easily maybe not the best receiver, but he's by far the best weapon.
Yeah, let's go on record and say that we don't agree with him being the number 1 player on the NFL top 100.
I don't know if I'd say that.
I don't think he's number 1. But he's dangerous.
He's the hardest person to defend.
Snead disagrees.
True that. I was about to say RIP, but he didn't die. Yeah, I mean, you got to be a little physical with him, but that's not really how corners are anymore. Those are few and far between. He's the one person I wouldn't want to game plan against. We've watched so many Dolphins games. I know we watch Red Zone, but they obviously would show all the big Tyreek plays, and like the plays, it would literally Tua would just take his 3-step drop and like launch it straight to the moon. Like it was literally the moment where you see those memes or something somewhere. It's like, fuck it, somebody's down here somewhere. Like Tua was doing this in a game where he would take and just launch it, and we're like, there's no way Tyreek's getting it, and it goes to Tyreek, and he kind of has to stop a little bit.
Yeah,
sometimes, but it's like there's no. You have to put somebody underneath him, on him, and over him. From a physical talent standpoint, he may or may not be the number one player in the league, but he's absolutely the most dangerous person and the hardest person to game plan for. If him and Tua both stay healthy for a full season, I'm not saying it's going to translate to a lot of wins, but the stats are going to be nice. And AFC Offensive Player of the Year, I mean, it would be Tyreek's.
Yeah, we're not going to go out on a limb here with the NFC Offensive Player of the Year. We both picked Christian McCaffrey. Hopefully that injury in training camp's nothing serious. Kyle Shanahan says it's not. It's really the first kind of thing we've heard injury-wise. I mean, he's always going to be beat up and banged up. That's just how they use him and how he plays. He's so physical as a runner and receiver. I mean, you could also throw Justin Jefferson out there, but we're hesitant on that just because quarterback. You know, it's not Kirk Cousins throwing the ball anymore. It's either Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. I still think Justin Jefferson's going to be fine because, again, he's the best receiver. But you still got to trust the person throwing you the ball. So jury's out on that. So until then, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey just because the dude's going to get touchdowns. He's going to get catches, the rushing yards, and just that offense in general. So, yeah, we didn't really go too far out and make a bold prediction on this one.
Yeah, no, I was kind of waiting for this one to kind of just reference for Derrick Henry. CMC is a prime example that you can go to a better team and your workload can get cut and you can still be extremely productive. The Panthers used him and abused him into the ground. I mean, we're talking like 30 carries, 15 target. Like, he was a cheat code in fantasy the weeks he would play. The Niners have kind of scaled it back and, getting him. It's still quite a bit of touches, his 20 to 25 all-around touches, but that's still 10 to 15 less a game, and still extremely productive because of the system he's in. That's kind of what I was trying to say with Derrick Henry. His workload is going to scale back some, but your situation and what's surrounding you matters. CMC, if it wasn't such a quarterback league, he'd already have a couple MVPs by now. Plain and simple. It's kind of unfortunate for him, because Tyreek as dangerous, CMC's right 1B to Tyreek's 1A as far as somebody it's hard to game plan for. They're explosive. They can do everything. I don't think anyone's surprised with this Offensive Player of the Year. Fantasy Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year. Most years could probably be in the MVP race. So, not really too far of a stretch on this one.
No, and I'm going to let you do your Coach of the Year real quick. I'm going to step away for a couple seconds.
Yeah, my Coach of the Year, I picked Mike MacDonald, the Seahawks' new coach. Super excited. I think that was a great hire for them. It's kind of the exact opposite of what they have had for the last 100 years with Pete Carroll. Nothing against Pete Carroll. He still brought a lot of energy. But Mike MacDonald's one of the new younger generation of coaches that are kind of taking over. He's a defensive guy. Seahawks have a lot of young, defensive, athletic people, and I think he's going to be able to do a lot with that. Not sure offensively. They bring back a lot of the same players. So who knows how they're going to look offensively and how it's going to translate to wins and losses. But I'm really excited what he can do with that defense. They have a lot of young talent. Witherspoon at corner, Woolen at corner, a couple young edge rushers. Yeah, it's a tough division, so who knows how many wins or even if a division title is in his future. But I'm really excited for what they have.
I agree. We kind of both we actually watched an interview with him on NFL Network before we hopped on here. Energy's high there, and I don't know. Do you think he would be able to get that defense back to where they were with Pete early on?
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to do better. Pete was kind of stuck in that old school way, which obviously worked early on. But you have to be able to adapt with what the league, the direction of the league. Not saying you change your scheme, but you have to be able to adjust it to work with what the league's doing. I think that's why people like Andy Reid offensively are always elite, because he's not stuck completely in his way. Now he is, as far as being pass happy, but he's always adapting it a little bit. He's always been a couple years ahead,
Right.
because he's willing to adapt and kind of change a little bit ahead of schedule. And I think that's what Mike MacDonald will do with the Seahawks. It's going to be a little bit more aggressive. Pete was always kind of that zone, not very exotic, not very blitz-like. Anyone who watched a Ravens game knows that the Ravens, just a bunch of psychos out there, and I love it personally. They always do really well against Chiefs offense. I mean, we usually hit a play or two here or there, but like he knows what the modern day calls for. He has two great young corners to work with on that as well. Some young edge speed rushers. Off-ball linebackers could be a little suspect. But he has the talent and speed and youth there to where it could kind of look like the last few years Steelers teams, where the defense is dominant and kind of an inconsistent, you don't know what you're going to get offensively type. But they're going to be competitive most games just because what he is going to be able to do with that defense.
Yeah, and you kind of look and see some of the pieces that they got. You're welcome. Absolutely fleeced the Broncos for those draft picks. But I know with the couple of those picks, they took those tackles to kind of help the offensive line. But their offensive line was not good. But then they were able to get Weatherspoon. They were able to piece something. And I think they actually hit on the draft really well with those corners. So it's a different situation. Usually you're thinking offensive-minded coaches, right? That's just how the NFL is now. Not in this case. You have a well put together defense. I think he's going to, kind of level them up a little bit. Jordan Brooks, he's a younger guy. I think he'll help him out a lot, just based on his experience and what he's had. Seahawks could be a sneaky good team. Another AFC or NFC West team. We talked about the Cardinals earlier, and now we're talking Seahawks. I mean, you never know what you're going to get with the Ravens. Yeah. I still think it's the 49ers division, right? But they're going to have some competition this year, and I think with him being able to build a defense and get them to where they're at, I think that's maybe not this year, but damn, wait for a couple years for him to actually establish and get some of his guys in there. You had made a comment earlier, which Ravens are going to follow him there, so got to keep an eye on that in the off season. So I went with DeMeco Ryans. What he did last year, I mean, there's always going to be that more pressure added to your second year. Damn, they got some pieces though. Man, they're going to be a scary group. Another players coach, you guys love them. They play hard for him. You add Danielle Hunter to the defense. He's going to have fun with that. Obviously, another defensive-minded coach. Diggs on the offense. Joe Mixon on top of what they already had. I know it's not normal. It usually goes to a coach who, worst to first, or new, could end up being Andy Reid, right? I mean, sometimes it just be like that. But I like DeMeco Ryans. I like the team they have. I like their roster. It's going to be a big prove-it year for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I agree. I love DeMeco Ryans. He's actually, when he was leaving the Niners, he was the one person I told you that you should have wanted as Denver's coach. A couple years past now, I'm really glad he wasn't the person Denver hired instead of Nathaniel Hackett.
Oh God,
I've always liked the defensive-minded dudes, as you could tell by my Coach of the Year pick. there's just so many offensive geniuses out there. Most of them worthy of all the praise that they get. But I always tend to lean towards the defensive-minded coaches. And you give DeMeco Ryans pieces like Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Stingley, Petrie, things like that in the secondary. The fact that we're talking about so much of their defensive pieces on a team that just took the league by storm last year offensively, and then added the pieces like Diggs and Mixon, there is going to be a lot of pressure. Expectations are high, which is why I don't know if Coach of the Year will go to a person like him or not.
You'd almost have to be, one, division winner, two, probably the top seed in the AFC. I'm not as familiar with the Texans' schedule, but I'm sure it's going to be, tougher schedule, right? I mean, any division game is going to be a tough
Playoff team
game. It
last
doesn't
year,
matter.
yeah, they'll have to play some teams. I like him as a coach. I do think there's a chance he does get Coach of the Year, especially if he meets and exceeds the expectations. Because let's be honest, on paper, which is all we can go off of right now, on paper, they may have the most talented starters across the board. I'm still not completely sold on depth for them across the board, which matters.
Yeah, it does.
But on paper, they're starting units on both sides. You have technically 2 all-pro receivers. I don't know if Nico Collins was or not, but he performed like one with him and Diggs. Tank Dell was well on his way to earning a shit ton of rookie awards and whatnot before Denver dirty injured him.
Whoa.
I know, he got in there blocking, but any shot I can take at Denver's worth it. But yeah, offensively they're loaded. Defensively they're young. They got a defensive-minded coach who has proven to be an incredible leader of an organization. There's no reason that they won't be catapulted into the Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals category, maybe right there with the Bills, where like you kind of expect them to be really good, but you still aren't quite sold on putting them there yet. But yeah, hell of a coach. It would be really awesome to see the Texans do well. I think you and I were some of the only people who weren't just big CJ Stroud haters coming out of college. Outside of Texans fans, obviously, but yeah, I'm excited to watch the Texans. Whether he wins Coach of the Year or not, they're just going to be a fun team to watch.
Well, that kind of wraps up our NFL Preseason Awards show. Super excited that we're this close to football starting. Give us your thoughts. We'll post this to our socials and see which ones you agree with and who you think is going to be the MVP. Next week, we'll dive into Chiefs Broncos training camp, little review. We're 2 weeks away. Yeah, 2 weeks away from our first KU home opener preview. Well, technically, it's not a home opener. They're playing at Sporting Kansas City Park, I think. But either way, super excited for some KU football talk. Find us on social media, Instagram. You can see these up in the corner. We're on it. We're on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and Instagram at Shovicks Sports. Come follow us. Again, we appreciate all the new listeners we're getting. We hope to keep spreading it, and hopefully now that we're getting some video, that'll help boost it up a little bit, and we can interact with you guys more. We may still have a guest here in the next couple of weeks, still ironing out some of that stuff. Going to come on and talk some college football with us, hopefully. So until next week, look forward to seeing you guys.